Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Planning Committee meeting tonight, the 26th of May. I'm Councillor Pam Posnett and I chair the Planning Committee. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency doors on your right of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist anyone who needs any assistance. Please put your phone to silent during the meeting. We will be using the audio-visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. Members wishing to speak, please raise your hand and speak directly into the microphone in front of you. Remember to turn it off once you have finished speaking, and some of you may need to just bring the microphone a little bit closer so that people can hear you. All members will vote by raising their hands. I would like to introduce those present at the meeting tonight. So we've got Councillor on my right, we have Councillor Webster, who is the Vice Chair of the Planning Committee, Councillor Chandler, Councillor Fisher, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Illingworth, Councillor Pritchett, Councillor Smith, Councillor Freer and Councillor Wood. We have a team of officers present who are, to my left, the Interim Assistant Director for Planning, Paul Fahili, the Planning Development Manager, Louise Parker, Senior Planning Officer, Andrew Cunningham, and Planning Officer, Helen White. To my right is the Planning Solicitor, Tom Pickwell. We also have our Democratic Services team present, assisting with the technology and taking the minutes. That is Adam Green and Helen Ainge, and they will assist anybody that needs any help with the microphone at the table at the bottom. So apologies for absence. We have only got, sorry, I didn't say this when I introduced everybody. Councillor Freer is here as a substitute for Councillor Ronan Brown. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? I would like to declare a personal interest, which is non-pecuniary, on application 2100929 Hallmark Melton Mowbray, as the owner of the business and myself used to work at the same company. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wish to declare a prejudicial interest in 200009 outline, land south of Granary Close. This actual site is owned by the Earl of Rutland and Dr. Fleming's Hospital Trust, and my son rents some land off them, so I think it would be deemed I have a prejudicial interest. Thank you. I'll leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Any other interests? No? Fine, thank you. To declare of the meetings on the, just need to get the date, the 28th of April. I take it you've all read the meetings. We've got 2 lots of minutes because we didn't look at the minutes from the 28th of April when we had the quick meeting after. So are there any issues with the minutes? Councillor
It's all right. PL 84, page 2. Councillor Holmes advised that although this site was in her ward, she had no interest in this application. It sounds as though I couldn't care less. It was just the way it was written in. It was just that I didn't have any interest in the. That's all. I think you understand what I'm saying.
So can I have a proposer for the minutes, please? Councillor Holmes and a seconder. Councillor Webster. Thank you. I have the minutes from the meeting that we had on the 5th of May. Councillor Chandler. Your microphone.
The one at Hose, I voted against it and I asked for my vote to be recorded, and it's not been recorded.
Democratic Services will correct that.
Please,
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Yes, page 14. I have been advised, somebody rang me up actually, about PL 95, the Brooksby Road application. Although it had been turned down, somebody for the applicant has dug a big ditch or something. So I just said, right, well, I'll mention it then. I can't do anything else, can I?
I don't think that relates to the minutes, but
Well,
thank
I
you.
was just
Yeah.
mentioning it in. I didn't know whether.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you,
righto,
Councillor
thank you.
Holmes. Can I have a proposer for those minutes then? Councillor Holmes, second. Councillor Chandler, thank you very much indeed. Schedule of applications. Our first one is I would like to call upon our solicitor, who has got a statement to make about an application that has been withdrawn.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to advise those in the public gallery and members that item 4.6 that was on the agenda, which is the deed of variation at 3848 High Street, Waltham-on-the-Wolds, has been withdrawn from the meeting tonight. Just for context, the applicant has come forward with some further information that substantially changes what the report contents will require. And because of the late notice that it needs to be readdressed, which is why it's been withdrawn from tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Tom. So our first application is land south of Granary Close, Bottisford, application number 2000009 outline. And the officer who's presenting that is Andrew Cunningham. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of updates first. 2 additional letters of representation have been received since the publication of the committee report, the content of which has already been sort of raised previously and therefore also covered within the committee extract. In addition, paragraph 4.9.1 refers to the site in recent arable use. That should read sort of pasture land instead, but members should note that it doesn't sort of change or make any material change to the application here before you. So the application is for up to 18 dwellings on part of the allocated site in both the local and neighbourhood plan. The allocation is overall for 41 dwellings, and the adjacent site has already been had a resolution to permit for 18 dwellings, so 36 in total this would bring up. The application is in outline form, so only principle of development for consideration and all details reserved except for the access, which is from Granary Close to the north. The proposal secures contributions to local infrastructure, affordable housing, as well as a buffer of the development to the south. Connectivity is secured by condition to the adjacent site to the west, to the footpath, and also the footpath to the south as well, which connects through to the village hall. Overall, the site is allocated for housing with an acceptable access for the quantum of development being proposed and is recommended for approval subject to conditions and a 106 agreement. Thank you.
Right, members, any questions for Andrew? Councillor Pritchett?
Just a point of clarification, Andrew, for everybody. The adjacent site had outline planning permission for 18. I think it's worth mentioning that there's a new application in. It says 18 in the papers. In March, there was a new application coming in for 23. So there's 23 next door, this 18, which equals the local plan number for that particular Bot 1 site. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yes, so that is correct. An application has been submitted on the adjacent site quite recently. However, we have to sort of look at the current position, which is the 18, which has been resolved to permit. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Holmes?
You said about the access is fine. I have actually, I came up the other day, staggered up because the lift wasn't working. And then I talked to our solicitor as well, because a lady came out when we were at the site visit and she showed us that actually, and we've looked at it, that the path on one of those houses, the path along to the footpath goes right up to somebody's door. Right up to somebody's door, because apparently that was a permission of, I don't know how to say it. It's something that's there before these were, covenant. Thank you, a covenant. Yeah. So, but it's still acceptable, is it, that a pathway goes up to somebody's door?
So yes, the highways access is from Granary Close. They are proposing to increase the width of that access to make it suitable for sort of the highways design guide. It's going to be sort of 5 meters in width with a 2 meter footway adjacent, and it does go sort of, the applicant has confirmed that they have rights of access within that land to access the development. From a highway safety point of view, it's considered acceptable for the quantum of development that's being proposed here. And also from a sort of a neighbouring amenity perspective, from the movement of vehicles, it's also sort of considered that it's acceptable in that respect as well.
Stopped us and said about it. So if they hadn't got, if they couldn't park on their land and then they had to park on the road, would there be access enough, wide enough for the cars to get in if they were parked on the road? Is that all right? I'm only asking the question. I don't know.
So I do believe the house does have sort of off-street parking as well, but the design of the access road has been designed in accordance with sort of the highways design guide to cater for that sort of development. Thank you.
Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you. It's on the same subject, but instead of asking or almost repeating, I'd like to bring it up as part of the debate, if I may. But I have a similar view on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Are there any more questions for Andrew? No? Fine then. We have 2 speakers tonight who will be speaking on this. And the first is Councillor Bob Bayman, who's the chair of the Parish Council. So if you'd like to come to the table, Mr. Bayman. You've been before, Councillor Bayman, so I know you know it's 3 minutes and I know you know how to use the microphone. I will remind you 30 seconds before that you're coming close to the end of your speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Bob Bayman, and I'm here to represent Bottesford Parish Council. The Parish Council object to the proposed development at the land south of Granary Close. We have 3 specific concerns about the site. Whilst this site was indeed a Schlar site and included in the local plan and the neighbourhood plan, the proposal has shifted quite considerably from that which the authors of the neighbourhood plan saw in the first instance: different ownership, different plans, different schemes, the whole piece. The specific concern is that this site is of great importance to the central community in the middle of Bottesford. It's probably the closest site of a scale of development to be developed for the last 150 years. It's right in the heart of the village, and therefore it has to be treated with exceptional sensitivity and care in the production of it. We haven't seen that so far. We've been knowing about these plans for the last 4 years. One of the key requests we made really early on in the whole process was to make sure that the 2 sites that you saw on the screen a moment ago that are adjoining to each other should be treated as one. And they should be treated as one so they're coordinated properly, and everything therefore will be seen as effective and efficient and well designed and well thought through. At the moment, they still remain as 2 separate sites. The result of this means that there's no planned coordination between the 2. There is 2 separate entrances going to 2 separate housing estates.
being treated as separate entities and not linked together. There are two separate SUD schemes. The SUD scheme is still not linked and put together. What this will create is two odd spaces working separate to each other right in the heart of our village centre. It's not an appropriate way to be looking at planning within such an important space. I'll speak for a moment about attenuation ponds. As you're probably aware, we've had two disasters over the last 9 years in our parish. Despite requests for attenuation ponds and water management to be managed properly, we have two sites that look more like your expectation of the sides of the A1 or the M1 than you would expect in the heart of a village that needs to look good, but also look after its children safely. They're high-sided, they're steep, and they're inappropriate. We need swales, we need appropriate planning. You can plan that if you plan these two areas together.
30 seconds.
At the moment, that's not being planned. The sense of place that was originally designed and thought through back in the days when we were writing the neighbourhood plan has been lost. There isn't a sense of place, which is a significant and lost amenity. And the final point, and you wouldn't surprise me to hear about this, is access. Getting in and out of both these sites is through a series of houses that were built only 2 decades ago, within the last 2 decades, but not built with access in mind. The areas are narrow, the houses are close together, and access has been already pointed out is going to be too tight to warrant the number of houses that are being planned to build in this site. I thank you for the time today. I'll clarify that the Botsford Parish Council objects and asks you to reject and refuse this planning application. Thank you very much for your time. If you've got any questions, I'm very happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Bayman. If you'd remain seated, please. Any questions for Councillor Bayman, members?
When we went to look at the site, we couldn't get into the field because it was locked. But at the back of the field, that right over the back, is there a pond there or something? It seemed to dip down at the back. I didn't know whether there was.
It dips down into a dike at the back, which runs across both of the parts between that and the village playing field that's directly behind it.
Councillor Pritchett.
Councillor Bob, do you not think that the condition 11 that the planning officer suggests will deal with the single unified approach? Have you seen the condition?
No, I have seen the condition. What I was concerned about was the wording of the condition. I don't see anything in there that stipulates this must happen, that this must happen. The two sites must co-join and work as one before building starts. And my worry is that while it makes good sense, it's easy to write that down and say this could happen. But the danger is if you approve it tonight, it can go ahead and it won't happen. And this is what's happened up at Grantham Road. We've got two different sites there that are sitting next to one another, would benefit massively to be put together and to work together, but that hasn't happened. It's in your gift to hold these two things together. It's in your gift to let them carry on separate. But if you carry on separate, they will be ill-coordinated, they will look awful, and they will spoil what is a significant tract of land in the middle of our village.
Any more questions from anybody? No, fine. Well, thank you very much, Councillor Bayman. I'd now like to call Mr. Wilkinson, who's the agent for the application. And I know I don't have to tell you, Colin, now too.
Actually, Chairman, we withdrew our and we were we hadn't seen the officer's report at the point that we requested to speak, and having seen the report and it seems to be covering everything, we decided we didn't need to.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Do you want to come back on anything, Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It's just picking up on the point about the integrated sort of site, and specifically the point that the Councillor Bayman made. So the application is for sort of the site here before you. The adjacent site has already had the resolution to permit for 18 dwellings, and as Councillor Pritchett referred to, condition 11 does sort of look, well, it does require the reserve matters to achieve an integrated layout and an integrated approach with that adjacent site at that reserve matters stage. So that can be considered at that point.
Thank you. Well, we've heard Councillor Bayman, we've heard Andrew, so it's over to you for the debate. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on that point just there. Are we in a position yet where we know that both sites are going to be constructed by the same developer? Because that would be an essential step in getting some parity of design. If they're not, the likelihood becomes less. Do we know?
So at the moment, it's different applicants and it's different sort of planning agents as well. But that condition still requires for an integrated approach, and the same, could be said about the other application as well on the other site.
So ideas of an integrated approach might not quite match up with our expectations, and indeed the expectations of the bosses to the residents. My main point was the point that Councillor Holmes mentioned, and I understand that when officers use terminology about highways and paths, is that they're approved, they're compliant, etc., etc. Well, yeah, when didn't highways approve anything? But looking at that site, if indeed the amount of front garden and drive of that one house in particular is to be taken to the extent that we're led to believe, notwithstanding that there's a covenant on it, and one could argue that the buyer's solicitor is at fault for not spotting it, be that as it may, do we not as a planning authority have a moral responsibility to make sure that something isn't built that impacts so greatly on one family's biggest investment? And the point of it, if they lose that much and park on the street, it's defeated the object, because they're taking up the width of the car on the road that they've widened. Do you get me? And I think it's incumbent upon us to try and act as a catalyst, shall we say, to a meaningful dialogue between the developers and the affected residents to see if there could be some mitigation against the loss that they would appear to be facing. And I know I'm talking more humanitarian than planning, but I think we have a role to play in protecting the interests of residents who individually and collectively we serve. So I would very much like there to be some dialogue, because on the face of it, it looks extremely intrusive.
Councillor Pritchett.
The report is, as one would expect for outline, is comprehensive. It's the same number of houses that's in the local plan, which is a pleasant change. So generally, what's not to like? Now, getting down to the crux of the matter, of the issue, real issue to chew over, I think, for the committee members, is the local plan appendix 1, page 13 for Bottisford, that this is a condition that the site can be developed as one single comprehensive development. Right? Now, as Councillor Bayman has said, he's hit the nail on the head about this is one of the, we have quite a number of estates in Bottisford. I live on one that are some semi-urban, but this is right in the centre of the village, where there's been some piecemeal developments over hundreds of years. And you could actually turn around and say, well, actually having 41 unified is worse than having 2 at 18 and 21. Both meets the design stage. So it's the interpretation of that. And as Councillor Bayman's mentioned, 2 roads in, two roads in, and 2 attenuation ponds. And it's just what do members interpret? It's difficult to interpret what that actually was meant to be, you know, and it may well have been put in the local plan following feedback from the parish council and people in the village on that. And I mean, I don't have an easy answer on this one because there are two separate owners. The timing is two separate sets of timing, but we do have one officer and one team dealing with both applications, and one set of management dealing with applications. Because I don't have a particular answer on this one.
Thank you. Any more that anybody would like to say about it? Councillor Freer.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to sort of clarify in my own mind, as a new person to the committee for a long time, that obviously the officers, as Councillor Pritchard said, the officers are talking to both applicants because they're two different outline planning applications. Have they got any more clarification on whether the two applicants are willing to create a unified scheme for both areas? Because I see that as one of the main problems with this plot of land. And if we've got some foresight into the two different ownerships, applicants, etc., it might help us to realise that this site can be a unified and look as one development, or they are completely divorced from each other. That's just a point I'd like to ask.
Anyway, and then Andrew, if you can come back.
Sorry, yeah, just picking up on what Councillor Pritchett said, forgive me. Did you, when you read the extract, was that from our local plan, and was it a stipulation, or was it a wish or desire? When you said about this, it's in our local plan.
Yes.
As a stipulation.
Yes. I can find it here.
I just want to be absolutely certain.
Site allocation specific policies, page 13 of appendix 1, blah, 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 blah. It is, the site can be developed as a single comprehensive development. It is the fourth bullet point relating to that site.
It doesn't say it shall be or must be, it says it can be.
It says the development of the site, reference bot 1, will be supported, provided.
All right, okay, thank you. Thank you. If I may just add, so that means it's against our local plan. Doesn't comply with that part of our local plan, so.
Thank you. Have you got any comments, Andrew?
I think I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we've got the condition 11 on the recommended conditions, which does require the reserve matters. A lot of the detail will come forward at the reserve matters stage. Can provide comfort that, you know, we do have area teams, so we are in the North team. I am the team leader for the North, so can provide comfort with the other applications as well that come forward on the adjacent site, and we are talking to the developers about that. It is difficult because the applicants are, as you said, sort of, they're different, and who knows what might happen in the future. We don't, but the chance, yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Holmes.
I'm not trying to really push this, but sorry, I'll have to come back about this footpath and where that one house in particular are going to put their car, because they couldn't get, from what we could see, I had to turn my, Councillor Chandler was in her car, we were in my car, and my car's considerably bigger than Councillor Chandler's. She could turn hers round, but I had a job to turn mine round. Well, if you're leaving a car outside the house that's going to have the pathway right up to the door, and they're going to have to put their car, and there's how many houses? 18, 21, 18, isn't it? 18 cars coming in and out, and there's cars parked on. Have we got enough room? Because it's a narrow site, and you know, we've got to think about this sort of thing, haven't we? Before I know it's a problem because there's a covenant on this, as the lady said. Well, we didn't know anything about it, obviously, but and their solicitor should have found out about it, no doubt. But it's just, to me, it's too narrow. If you've parked a car, you've got a path coming right out, then their car, and then there's got to be somebody to be able to get through, and it just doesn't seem wide enough. But that's all. Thank you.
I think we can only go with what the Highways recommendations were. Councillor Holmes, sorry, Councillor Illingworth.
Sorry, yes. My initial reaction to hearing that statement was to propose refusal, but I believe this is one of those cases where a deferral would be better, provided that that deferral time, shall we say, is used to get the two developers around the table and properly talk about how it's going to be integrated, because condition 11 is only some words on a piece of paper. You know, it'll be long forgotten when outlines granted, reserve matters comes forward, and the next one comes forward. So I propose that we defer it in order for us to facilitate specific dialogue with both developers about the integrated approach, and specifically about the width of the pathway and the intrusion to any existing dwellings. I believe it's incumbent upon us to take that role. So that's what I propose.
Can we just listen to Mrs. Parker, the manager of the planning officers team, and just listen to what she says before we go any further? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the comments. Completely take on board your views with regards to cohesion of the two sites. It's a very important matter. I think what we're struggling here maybe a little bit with the deferral. We do have to bear in mind that there are the two sites, there are the two landowners. As officers, the package for reserve matters are being discussed with both sides, both applicants. Just want to kind of remind you, the furthest we can go in this sense is condition 11, which relates to the reserve matters. There's very little we can do at this outline stage in terms of persuading one application to come forward. They are two separate applications, but yeah, discussions with both agents with regards to their sites coming forward cohesively at reserve matters is entirely the purpose of condition 11. So if members are minded to defer, I probably just need a little bit more clarity as to what the expectation is for that deferral, please.
Councillor Illingworth.
So, Louise, what you're saying is that if it goes through in outline, condition 11 is sufficient to make sure that reserve matters comes forward with there having been a significant amount of cooperation between the developers and even dialogue between affected owners. Because, forgive my cynicism, but we all know that once something passes one hurdle, the next hurdle becomes a bit easier, doesn't it? And there's momentum gathers, and it's hard to stop. So I would withdraw the deferral if I had that assurity that reserve matters will come together following meaningful discussion and collaboration between the owners, developers, and will include any residents that are affected adversely. That's my
I'm
worry.
sorry, Councillor Bowman, I take it that was you. You can't speak. You've had your 3 minutes. Let the committee please get on with their debate.
Chair, that's the essence of my concern, which is why I proposed it in the first place. And I'm trying to find the surety of what will happen if I don't. And right now, I'll stick with proposing the deferral. I think that gives us more chance of getting it right than letting it through and hoping for the best later.
Councillor Pritchett.
Yeah. I've never seen a definition as to why it wants to be a single unified development. So I think looking behind that, I think there's a concern justifiably that we don't get two sets of urban style houses that are different plonked in this sensitive location. So if that was the aim, then the design workshops with the parish council and they can have different windows, both can relate to, you know, different roof heights and that sort of thing. So I think we need to think back behind this. And I mean, whilst you might want one road going in and out, some of them are quite happy to have a cul-de-sac and just in and out of their own little bit. You know, it's a very difficult thing to put in a local plan with different landowners, you know, so it's very difficult. So I mean, I would be supportive of going forward on the understanding of condition 11, but on the same token, in the meetings as we go forward between ward councillors and the management team going forward on these two developments, I think we need to make sure that we get, and also go back to the parish council to say, look, what is the crux of what you're after out of this, from even if there's two owners. So I do believe it is actually workable, and I would be quite happy to, you know, to support this going forward in that way.
Councillor Illingworth, I'll come to you, Councillor Wood, after. Councillor Illingworth, have you made the motion to defer? You have. So you've proposed deferral. What reasons, what policy are you using for that deferral?
Part of the local plan that on the text in the local plan that Councillor Pritchett was kind enough to read out for me again, where it says where it refers to the to the two sites, provided that an integrated approach is taken. Words like that. You knew the exact words, didn't you, Don? And read them out for me. Is there any chance you could possibly just reiterate those? Sorry to keep asking. Might as well get it word perfect as not.
I think I ought to, Chair, I think I ought to just read the comprehensive 5 of them out so we can consider the other bullet points and not just this one. It is ensured that no adverse impacts will affect the nearby local wildlife site located in the proximity of the southern boundary, which is covered in the report. The footpath link through the centre of the site to Grantham Road is retained and enhanced with additional landscaping and improved boundary treatment. I believe that's in the papers. The site can be developed as a single comprehensive development. Flood mitigation measures have been put in place and the drainage infrastructure is available to accommodate the surface water from this site. Well, I think some things are already in the plan, some reserve matters for the flooding and mitigation. So, I mean, we've never had nobody's got a proper definition of what this single site means, and so I mean, I think the way forward, there is a way forward. I'd be happy to propose that we go forward and accept this if there's a seconder, and then the people go forward, on the team go forward.
Councillor Pritchett, you know, I have to use Councillor Illingworth's motion for deferral first of all, then we'll come to you, then I'll come to you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Illingworth has proposed deferral. Can I have a show of hands of those? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Can I have somebody to second that? Councillor Holmes.
Can I will second it as long as. Can I just ask a question to the officer whether he knew that about this covenant? Did Highways know about the covenant? So if they didn't know about the covenant, it would make a difference to the access.
Andrew?
Can I?
Or Tom?
Perhaps I could ask you.
Tom.
Yes, please, Tom.
Councillor Holmes, I'm not aware of the covenant, but it sounds like it's going to be a private law matter. If there's a private covenant over that land of whatever form, sorry, that's a private law matter. It's not a planning matter if it's a private covenant over that land. So it's not within the realms of this application, a private covenant. Like I said, I don't know what that covenant is, but that's all I can advise.
In that case, definitely I would second that, because it is a matter of a wide footpath. We see the end of it. And if Highways didn't know about a covenant, which they should have known and you should have known, then it makes it very wide and the entrance very narrow.
Councillor Holmes, if that's
So
a
Councillor
Holmes, if that's a private covenant, there is no way that Highways would know about it. They would only know about it if somebody had told them, and if they've not been told, then you know they're not mind readers. They look at the application they've got in front of them. Yeah.
Members, can I just advise on a couple of points? So I would strongly advise going discussing the covenant in terms of any motion here, because I can't see the relevance to the planning application. Just coming back to the other point of wanting to defer the motion on the single site idea. I think officers have already said that condition 11 is as far as it could go. So I think we just need to be clear what you want officers to be able to do on a deferral if they're not going to be able to go any further on that point. So I think we just need to draw that out so that officers can be crystal clear what it is you want them to do with the deferral.
Councillor Holmes, are you still seconding that deferral? Okay, Councillor Illingworth, you've heard what the solicitors said. Have you got any other thoughts on what he's just said about points of deferral?
I stand by it, and my reasons are that I think that is the only way we can guarantee the degree of cooperation and subsequent coordination of those two plots, and have meaningful dialogue between the two developers, so that when they both come to reserve matters, they are in accord, and that, without using the word covenant, that the impact of any development on any existing house owners on the more recent development be looked at, and if found to be obtrusive, to find a way of maybe mitigating that to less. It's not quite as eloquent as I would sometimes have put it, but that's the best I can manage tonight.
Louise is going to come back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the wording, Councillor Illingworth. Again, I'm completely understanding of the cohesive development, and I think I'm getting all of the information here, and you're wanting the developers to talk to one another, bring the scheme together, make it look like one scheme, and that's how I'm understanding your intention. My concern is a deferral won't achieve that, because at the minute the applications are in outline. So with outline, we look at the access, we look at the details for the outline permission. What I'm trying to put here is condition 11 for an outline application is as far as we can go as officers, with the details actually being looked at reserve matters. because when we get to reserve matters, that's when we get to see the layout and the scale, and we get to see the connectivity. So I'm happy with the wording for the deferral. I understand your intention in terms of cohesive development. I just wanted to flag the fact that officers may not be able to get the resolution that you seek from the deferral.
Councillor Illingworth, you're still going ahead with your motion, or?
Because we won't get it if we don't ask for it.
So we'll go to a vote. So all members who are in favour of deferral, please show. That is 2. So any members are against the deferral, please raise your hands. Are there any abstentions? So there are 7 in favour and 2 against, so the motion fails. We now need another motion. Smith?
I would like to propose approval, but is there any way that we can sort of strengthen condition 11? Do you know what I'm saying? So I understand that it says the following must be submitted, and it's demonstration that the layout achieves an integrated approach. I want to make it, I don't know. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Because we do see it quite often that applications come back and the conditions are almost ignored. So I just want to avoid that happening. I don't want any sort of varying of conditions coming back, or, you know, do you understand?
Yes, to be honest, what we could look to do is potentially sort of separate that condition 11. So pluck that out into a separate condition and sort of add some extra wording to it about sort of specific design criteria or things that you might want to look for across the 2 sites as part of that reserve matters submission.
Yeah, that would be perfect then, if we could do so. So add on a condition that relates to the design, the layout, the materials used, sort of everything to make it look as sort of singular as possible. Yeah, thank you. And then I'm happy to propose that.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Have we got anybody? Councillor Pritchett?
Second that.
Thank you very much. So we've had a motion to propose. We've had a seconder. Can we have a show of hands, please? One against. Any abstentions? So the motion to permit is carried. Did you want to come back? I'm sorry, the motion's got in between when you wanted to speak.
No, I was just going to simply say that in number 11, just the word layout by itself was too restrictive, and therefore it was just going to make the same point really, that it needed to go a lot further, because if it was just layout, there's a good chance it doesn't really become integrated.
Thank you very much. So that is permitted. So that application is completed. So we now go on to application 20/00452 Oakham Road, Somerby, and that is Louise. So yeah, sorry, we've just got to wait for Councillor Chandler to come back. Thank you. She's back. So now over to
Thank you, Chair. So the application before you is a reserve matters application for 32 dwellings, including garages, car parking, new site access and proposed landscaping strategy. It follows approval of outline 16/00100. The proposal includes all matters for consideration, so access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. Members should be aware that a discharge of condition application is also being considered by the local planning authority. This is in relation to detail specific management plans and drainage. The discharge of condition application does not impede the determination of the reserve matters application. Can I have the next slide, please? Vehicular access into the site is proposed directly from Oakham Road as a T-junction and would meet the design standards set out by Leicestershire Highway Authority in terms of visibility displays. Since the submission of the application in April 2020, a number of revisions have been submitted which have significantly altered the proposal. This has been achieved by working with the community and the applicant to secure a good design, and the layout has been key to achieving this. The layout now removes a large number of tandem parking spaces and provides a courtyard style to the development, ensuring all properties have sufficient private amenity space and the development is cohesive throughout. The scheme proposes a number of sustainability credentials, which are set out in the report. I must note to members there is an error at 4.5.6 of the report, and members should note that there are 2 retained trees on site, not 3. Replacement trees are being planted at a ratio of 2:1 and 3 additional per plot, which is in line with the Somerby Neighbourhood Plan requirement. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Within the development, the submitted details in respect of the dwellings show that those proposed are single and 2-storey in height with varying eave heights. Assessing these various house and garage types against the existing dwellings in the immediate and wider area shows that they are all of a scale in keeping with the immediate local environments. For the reasons set out in the report and the conditions associated, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Committee, any questions or any clarity you want from anything that Louise has just said? Councillor Chandler.
Louise, you've not mentioned flooding. I went on the original application about 2016-17 and both sides of the road were flooded, and there's quite a bit in the report, but you've not mentioned anything tonight. Can we have an update on where we are with flooding? Because I think it's a very serious thing for many people in Somerby, especially that part of the village.
Absolutely, and appreciate through the comments that have been received through the application process. My specific point was the discharge of conditions, which relates to drainage more specifically. So there is a drainage strategy, a well drawn up drainage scheme for this application, but those details are being looked at through the discharge of condition, which formed part of conditions in relation to the outline. So the actual mechanisms and schemes that are in place aren't part of the reserve matters application.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Chandler? Sorry? Oh. No, I'm sorry, that's all I've got to say. Any other clarifications from Louise? Councillor Pritchett?
The affordable homes, were the numbers of affordable homes in the development set at an earlier stage?
Yes, they were, Councillor Pritchett. The section 106 was agreed as part of the outline, which was a 2016 application prior to the adoption of the local plan and indeed the neighbourhood plan. So the numbers that are presented in the report, which is a total of 11, is correct.
Any other comments or questions for Louise? No? Okay, then fine. So we have 2 speakers tonight. One is Councillor Carl Powell from the Parish Council, and the other one is Caroline Shave from Shave Planning. So Councillor Powell. Thank you. You know how to use the microphone. You know you've got 3 minutes. I'll remind you 30 seconds.
Got it
before
now?
the end. Thank you.
Yeah. Try again. Thanks to a lot of improvements by the applicant and a lot of attention from Melton, especially the case officer Louise, we do still object to this proposal, but only on a single ground, which is that it would increase flood risk to existing homes. The proposal site sits at the bottom of a much larger field, nearly 3 hectares. The rest of the field wasn't shown on those slides. The rest of the field rises about 10 metres as a hill to the south. Presently, surface water from that hill runs north down across the site into the roadside ditch to the north alongside Oakham Road, from which it's carried away. The problem is that the landscaping of this proposal would put the new houses and most of their gardens on new made ground up to 1.2 metres above existing ground levels. In effect, on a new artificial plateau a metre high. The surface water from the south could therefore no longer cross the site, it would be forced around it to where existing homes lie. That wouldn't only increase the flood risk to them, that would be creating a new risk that was never there before as a consequence of the proposed landscaping. Expert reports to Melton Borough Council and to us from Pick Everard Consulting go further and say that flooding would actually be expected. The risk should be avoided by not making an artificial plateau of the site. In other words, refusing that part of the landscape plan. Failing that, the applicant proposes to mitigate it with a catchwater ditch between the proposal and existing homes to the west. MBC have expert advice from Pick Everard that constructing and maintaining a ditch there needs at least a 3.5 metre wide strip of undeveloped land along the boundary. This was in a report to MBC in January 2018, Appendix O. But the proposed layout leaves no room for that strip. No design is given for this potential ditch. It's just a dotted blue line. No indication where it would discharge, and all the land would be developed as private gardens. For this reason, the layout should not be approved. It's true that the LLFA are raising no objection at this time, but they comment only on the drainage of the site itself. Sorry?
2 seconds left.
Yeah. They say nothing at all about flood risk elsewhere, except to give their standing advice that when determining planning applications, the local planning authority should ensure flood risk is not increased elsewhere. Following that advice, this application should be refused, as the landscaping layout would by their nature increase flood risk to existing homes. It's quite dependent of discharge of conditions.
Are you coming to the end of what you've got
Yes.
to say?
The decision is for Melton, the responsibility is theirs. We ask you to refuse the application. Thank you for listening. I can take questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Powell? No? Councillor Chen.
I'd like to come back, Madam Chairman, on this flooding issue, because when we went in 2000 and whenever it was, both sides of the road were flooded, and the road, actually there was surface water flooding on the road. Now, how are we dealing with that? Because it's a major problem when you get flooding. I mean, we had it in 2001 and I saw what happened when people had got flood water coming out the toilets. It's not funny. And I don't think we've had anything tonight to tell us that this actually has been hit on the head and we know where we are with it.
Do you want to come back yet, Louise, or will you wait until the end? Nothing further to say. Okay, fine. Other questions? Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The land, it's clay, isn't it? It's very clay land. Well, when it comes down the hill and up the bottom, it's more clay, isn't it? Because it won't drain away that well. That's what I'm really saying.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, councillor.
Yeah, because this always seems to, being a farmer, you sort of get the idea of this from years gone by and how you have to clean out ditches and things. And it does make an awful lot of difference, the type of land it is. So are you taking, can I just ask if you're taking that into consideration about the type of land it is, clay soil?
Yeah, so the discharge of condition will contain all elements of drainage, including the way it functions, the way it flows, and the land as well.
Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you. I found your presentation and your papers on the flooding very comprehensive. Are you actually saying that because of the design, a drainage plan cannot be put forward that prevents flooding of neighbours?
I can't conclusively say that, but I think I don't want to stray into discharge of conditions because I've been asked not to, and I do understand the difference. What I'm saying is that the layout, the landscaping at reserve matters, landscaping layout are part of reserve matters. I'm not straying into discharge of conditions. I'm saying that the landscaping, which is building a plateau above existing homes, is inherently creating a new flood risk.
What would you suggest then that they do?
Well, I'm not a drainage engineer, but for example, is this still going? Yeah, sorry. But for example, a previous proposal didn't include necessarily raising it 1.2 meters above existing houses. It suggested, for example, enhanced downstream works and a partially pumped system. So there's a constructive suggestion that wouldn't necessarily involve building a hill above existing houses, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. Any, Councillor Pritchett?
This is a question of the officers. I mean, how much of this would be covered by the discharge of the condition, and how much is to do with the reserve matters of the design tonight? I'm a bit confused about that.
So the reserve matters contains the layout and the landscaping, which is the plan that have been presented to you. And within the report, there is a summary of the drainage and the flooding in terms of how that interacts with the reserve matters. My recommendation is for approval of the reserve matters, given the consideration of drainage within the layout and landscaping elements of the reserve matters. However, completely understand the technical detail queries which would follow in the discharge of condition.
Summary, you'll deal with it at the discharge of the condition.
My summary is that the reserve matters are acceptable and the discharge of condition for the technical elements is ongoing.
Okay, any more questions for Councillor Powell? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Powell. I'd now like to call Caroline Shave, the agent, please. Good evening. Your microphone's been switched on for you, so we're all right. You've got 3 minutes, Caroline. I'll warn you 30 seconds from the end.
Thank you. May I request first that the layout is put up on the screen so that I might refer to it?
Can we have the
That's
layout put
okay.
up on the screen? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm pleased to put forward this application for consideration with a recommendation for approval following positive and proactive working with your officers. The application has been subject to 2 workshops with the Parish Council. We took away feedback from the first workshop, addressed it with revised plans and further information, such that the concerns of the Parish Council were addressed on a number of matters. We've also sought to involve the Parish Council in the choice of building materials, presenting them with options for bricks, tiles and cladding and render. at the most recent workshop, and therefore the proposals have had a good level of community involvement. As the officer's report details, the proposals have been amended to provide an improved housing mix compliant with planning policy, to improve the design of the properties taking into account neighbourhood plan guidelines, to provide an adoptable highway layout, and to incorporate features such as bat and bird boxes, additional tree planting and electric vehicle charging points. Proposals therefore positively respond to all relevant policies in the local plan and neighbourhood plan. So flooding and drainage has been a key consideration on this site from the outset, and we've listened to and responded to the concerns of the Parish Council in this respect. Although this is dealt with separately under the discharge of conditions, we recognise that nonetheless we did need to provide full drainage details with the reserve matters application in order to provide reassurance in relation to layout and landscaping that the detailed development design could be adequately drained without causing flooding elsewhere. This has been subject to consultation with the lead local flood authority, who have responsibility for ensuring drainage of the site and stopping the flooding being increased elsewhere. And following adjustments to the design, consideration of all of the earthworks, the drainage proposals, the lead local flood authority has confirmed they have no concerns. Therefore, the discharge of conditions really should be a formality. The drainage design is proven to drain the site without causing flooding elsewhere. And furthermore, we've provided some additional drainage features above and beyond the rigorous formal design. We've included the extra drainage around the perimeter of the site as a safeguard to ensure that the water is channeled and does not overflow onto property boundaries. In any case, the site does drain down to the northeast corner away from properties. Therefore, we've responded positively to policy in the National Planning Policy Framework that requires no increase to flood risk elsewhere. The site at present is a field where it has an uncontrolled flow across the field. The proposals will implement a positive drainage system engineered to channel the water away from property boundaries into the attenuation features, which are engineered to take into account future climate change. So I hope that you will support this application this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd just like to remain there. Members, have you got any questions for the agent, please? No? Fine. Well, thank you very much indeed, Caroline. Yes, nothing. Okay. Right. Over to you then. We've heard the presentations from the Parish Councillor and also the agent. So comments, questions?
Well, I'm always loath to, if I'm minded to approve something, to dive in before there's been a debate. But there seemed to be some reticence. So I find myself reassured by what the last speaker has just said, that the drainage has been adequately addressed. It's always been our biggest single concern. And on that basis, I'm happy to propose that it be approved as per officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Councillor Smith did indicate she wished to speak first. Councillor Pritchard.
I'd like to second that, but to just make a point that it's the discharge of the drainage conditions that gives us confidence, not the speaker. So I'll second that one, just a point of clarification.
Don't burst the bubble, please.
I would echo that too.
Thank you. So we have had a motion. Yeah, we have had a motion, but before we take that to task and we vote on it, are there any more comments from anybody about this application? No? We've had a motion to accept the proposal. Can I have a show of, and it's been seconded, can I have a show of hands, please? No. Any against? Right, so we've got 1 abstention and nine permit. So thank you very much indeed for that. Now go on to Southview 120 Grantham Road, Bottisford, and I believe that's Helen. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. This Ready? It's okay. This is an outline planning application for the demolition of an existing bungalow within the application site and the erection of 5 new 5-bedroomed dwellings. Access, landscape and layout are for consideration. So can we move to the next slide, please? As shown in this plan. There are a number of benefits to the scheme. The access is considered acceptable in highway safety terms, and the scheme proposes increasing the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit along Grantham Road so that it terminates to the east of the proposed access point to the site. In addition, the proposal would provide a footpath connecting the application site to the public footpath along Grantham Road, which can be seen just to the south of plot 2 on the plan. And then if we can move to the next slide, please. This is the existing bungalow within the application sites, and we can move to the next slide, please. The proposal would result in an improved appearance of the site. However, if we move to the next slide, please. As you can see, the application site is the orange wedge-shaped plot. The site sits outside of the defined village envelope for Bottisford. So the village envelope is the red line shown on that plan. Therefore, there's considered to be a conflict between the proposed application and the neighbourhood plan policy 1, as well as local plan policy SS2 in terms of unsuitable development outside of the limits of the settlement. For that reason, the application is recommended for refusal.
Any questions of the officer? Councillor Illingworth and then Councillor.
Thank you. Yes. Is it not the case that well, firstly, I thought we did away with village envelopes some years ago, but is it not the case that the Bottisford plan, which has redefined that, has only recently reached a level of significance, whereas our plan, which didn't include a village envelope, has been adopted for some time? Is that the case?
To come back to you on that, Councillor, with regards to which policy we give precedence to when we're considering a planning application within the planning application, within the local plan framework, we give precedence to the most up-to-date planning policy. So the neighbourhood plan policy 1, as the more up-to-date policy, takes precedence over the policies in the local plan.
Wow.
So now you know.
We should have just got every village to make a neighbourhood plan and not bother with their own, shouldn't we?
Thank you. Councillor Pritchett.
What you've not been clear about is that the application was received on the 8th of September 2020, right? The vote for the neighbourhood plan was the 3rd of September 2021. And I don't know how many temporary planning officers have been looking after this that's left it so long. And unfortunately, we're in the position tonight because applications are determined at the date they're determined, not the date they're stamped in as applied. So it's an unfortunate position. And if you were to go back into the file at the time of the consultation with ward and parish councillors, there were no the objections were not raised about the envelope. And to be fair, even if the neighbourhood plan was at an examination stage, even if they had been put in, it would have been a limited weight, I think, would have been. So we're having to look at a very simple case with very few documents on the portal that has now been allowed to go over a time, which has caused this particular problem to be sorted. I think that clarifies the history of the application. That's all.
Yeah, it was not a question, but we got a history lesson. Thank you. Any other comments from anybody? Councillor Chan.
Can I just reiterate what Councillor Pritchett has said, because I tried to bring this application. Can I ask why this application wasn't determined at an earlier stage when I chased it on numerous occasions? I mean, the original case officer has now left the authority, but I did chase it on 3 or 4 occasions, and I was told that it wasn't coming to committee because there hadn't been any objections, and it would just go through the normal course. And I was flabbergasted when I received a telephone message from the applicant saying that what was happening.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Helen?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, with regards to the planning application, yes, it was submitted at a time when limited weight would have been given to the neighbourhood plan. And since that time, during the consideration of the planning application, the neighbourhood plan has been adopted and is now afforded full weight. However, when the application was initially submitted, there were technical issues that needed to be overcome with regards to the proposed site access, which has then resulted in the proposed extension to the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. The public footpath through the site has been added as an addition, and also there were concerns raised by environmental health with regards to land contamination, which had to be looked into further. So there were technical issues that have been looked at during the consideration of the planning application.
Councillor Pritchett.
I think they were all concluded by about March 2021, if you look on the portal.
Thank you for that comment. Any other? Councillor Holmes?
I've got one at Scorford that's the same. Anyway, that's not to do tonight. But when you said about the access, when you've had, it was a little farm, I think, wasn't it? It was a little farm at one time. Are you questioning? Yeah, I am. I'm just questioning about the access, and you said there were problems with the access.
I'm not sure of the history of the site, whether it was a small farm.
Yeah, well, if it was a small farm, and if you're looking at an inspector looking at it, then you will find that there'll be ins and outs, a lot more than 5 houses. You know, that's just something that if the inspector was looking at it, that's all.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. I know the application has been cited for refusal based on the conditions put in the report, but in terms of housing need, is there anywhere in the report that discusses that? Is there a need for houses of that size? Please.
The application seeks planning permission for five-bedroomed properties. In the local plan, it's very much more weighted towards smaller scale residential properties and the need for kind of 2 and 3 bed, and that's reiterated in the more recently adopted neighbourhood plan.
Thank you. Any other questions for the officer? Councillor Pritchett?
Just a point of clarification there, if there was a concern at the time about this number of bedrooms, it could have been addressed. There was plenty of time to address it. So it wasn't a concern at the time.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? No? Right, we've got one speaker, and that's Councillor Bayman from the Parish Council. Thank you, Councillor Bayman. You will have 3 minutes, and I'll remind you 30 seconds before it ends.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this proposal as well. It's to support the suggestion to reject the application. It is indeed outside the village envelope, and we are blessed now that we have a neighbourhood plan that is actually protecting the village to a large degree, so we should celebrate that. The second point that was very much brought up by the Parish Council in their objection was actually a lack of connectivity between this site and the rest of the village. Whilst it's been discussed that there is an idea of a path that runs through it, you'll be aware that there are 2 building sites next door to this. One is in development at the moment, and one is a Schlar site that hasn't commenced yet. There is no clear cycle route or walk path from either of those sites in place yet that connects those 2 sites to the rest of the village, despite the fact that the Parish Council has asked this body on a number of occasions to ensure that will be the case. That has not happened. It was meant to be a condition, but it hasn't happened. So as a consequence, at the moment, if you're living on either of those 2 sites, you will have to jump in your car to safely get to the village centre. To connect these 5 houses to those 2 sites does not get you safely into the village centre. So on that grounds, the Parish Council objected and asked you to reject and support the report from the officer tonight. While mentioning it, we do have a problem. We're starting to have a problem with enforcement within the parish of Bottisford. This place, forgetting the planning application, the site that you've seen tonight is in an awful state of disrepair with all sorts of vehicles parked around it and such like. That needs to be addressed. And it shouldn't have to wait for a planning application before that's addressed. But the place is a scar on the landscape. Perhaps
Sorry
to
to cut you off, but the enforcement isn't relevant to this application.
Right. And then the final thing to say is that whatever scope we see for such large houses like this, wherever they be built, we need to see better and stronger environmental credentials with the proper cabling in for PV and EV. Again, asked for in the neighbourhood plan. We didn't see it in this, another reason for rejection. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Councillor Bayman? No? Well, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bayman. Right, members, we've had the presentation from the Parish Councillor. The officer hasn't got anything to add to what she's already said, so we're over to debate. So, Councillor Pritchett.
The access was settled for this one with a footpath out of the corner to join a footpath across the 2 new housing estates. What the position is at the moment is that, as Officer Mr. Cullingham will know, and Louise will know, there's a condition that there's a footpath from the Bellway through to join an existing footpath on the south side. It has to be the south side, and this will come out at the corner and meet that. It's not there now, but it's a condition of that development to join in, and it's always been on the portal since about March 2021. I mean, the point that's been made about PV and EV, and the world has moved on. I'm sure that we can, if there was a move to permit, I'm sure that there would be a condition to look at that again and upgrade as appropriate if the officers felt so.
Any other comments from anybody? Councillor,
As a substitute committee member and someone that's not aware of the years of history with this application, am I permitted to propose the refusal?
if that is the conclusion you have come to after listening to the officer's presentation, the report from Councillor Bayman, and also the papers that you have read, then yes, Councillor Freer, you're in a position to propose what you like.
Thank you, Chair.
Have you made a proposal?
Yeah, proposal to go with the officer's recommendation to refuse the application.
Councillor Smith?
Yes, happy to second refusal. Yes.
Thank you. So we've had a proposal which has been seconded to refuse the application. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's 7 for, any against? And 3 against that. So the proposal to refuse has been carried. And Councillor Pritchett and Councillor Chandler have asked for their votes of not going with the recommendation to be recorded, please. Right, well, thank you very much. We now go on to the would we just like a short 5-minute comfort break because we have got 2 more applications to hear. Thank you.
We're always being told that if we actually refuse an application.
Yeah, we're having a break.
Yeah, I
Councillor.
know we are, but
I know, I'm just saying
I
to
want to just
Councillor Illingworth.
make the point that because this has been in a long time, there was different history to it, goes to appeal, we could lose the appeal. That's all I'm making point. Thank you.
Can we start the meeting again, please? Councillor Holmes has decided to leave us. Just whilst we're waiting for Councillor Holmes to return to the meeting, I would just like to say that some of the people at the back of the room are having difficulty hearing. So as I asked in the beginning, can you pull the microphones closer to your mouths, please, when you speak? I think it's usually better at the back of the room because there's more speakers down there. But obviously, because you're not got the microphone right in front of your mouth, it's having an effect. Right, we are now on to the 4.4, which is Hallmark Melton Mowbray, and Andrew is the officer that will be taking us through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks full planning permission for the extension to an existing warehouse shown in, well, sort of the pink shaded box there. That's the extension. The site is within an allocated employment site in the Melton local plan, and it's in Melton Mowbray. No concerns are raised on visual amenity, neighbouring amenity or highway safety. The applicant has demonstrated sort of significant economic benefits of the scheme, which is supported by the Economic Development Officer and includes sort of expansion of a long-standing business and increased employment, which weigh heavily in the consideration of the application. However, the site is located within both flood zone 3A and 3B. Although the majority of the site is in 3A, part of the development is within 3B, which is the functional floodplain, of which this type of development, being an industrial sort of proposal, is not considered to be appropriate under the National Planning Policy Guidance, and the Environment Agency have objected for that reason. Flood mitigation measures are being provided, and if we can go to the next slide, please, you can see that the building is being sort of raised up 1.5 meters on stilts with a void underneath the building, which would still ensure that the development would not displace floodplain volumes or obstruct sort of the flood storage as part of the proposal. It's fully acknowledged that the proposal is aligned with the council strategic objectives and corporate priorities. And it is a very finely balanced consideration between the economic benefits of the scheme against sort of the location of the development within the functional floodplain. There has been numerous dialogue with the Environment Agency during the course of the application, as well as the applicant providing sort of additional mitigation measures during the course of the proposal. However, the Environment Agency do still object to the proposal, and it is for this reason that the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Any questions for Andrew? Councillor Chandler and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Has there been any dialogue with the Environment Agency since the 22nd of February? Because there is a letter on their website from them saying that if the Planning Authority are minded to approve the application, they've suggested some conditions. Has there been any dialogue since then or not?
So that is their latest written and formal consultation response. So it is objecting to the proposal. However, obviously, if the local planning authority are minded to permit, then they would want to ensure that that condition is sort of put on the permission. We have spoken to the Environment Agency since, sort of verbally since then, but because it is within sort of the functional floodplain and it's a type of development which isn't considered to be sort of appropriate, as I referred to earlier, then they're objecting for that reason, effectively.
They can get insurance because they've got a big enough site adjacent to it, which they want to join up with. So if you can get insurance on industrial or commercial premises, the insurers can't think there's too much of a problem.
That would be up to them to arrange and not part of obviously the planning consideration here this evening.
Councillor Smith and then Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in the consultation with the Environment Agency, it says that flood zone 3B floods frequently. How, this is probably going to sound really pedantic, how frequently is that, and when was the last time it did flood? I'm really sorry.
So I don't know when it last flooded, but I believe in the report it sort of talks about what the different flood zone 3B sort of refers to, and it sort of talks about the development in flood zone 3B being the functional floodplain where the flood storage levels are, that's where it would be.
Thank you.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can tell you when it last flooded around that area, 1998, before the dam. And also, I would like to know why the Environment Agency seemed to think the Thorpe Brook is anything to do with it. It's miles away. It's not anywhere near. The Thorpe Brook, I can assure you, I know exactly where it is. It's on my patch and it is nowhere near this. So why on earth if they've brought that up, I do not know. But it was 1998
Officers
when
can't,
it flooded.
officers can't answer for the Environment Agency. Councillor Holmes, the
Um,
Environment Agency have made their points and the officers have to accept those because they're the experts on flooding authorities.
Madam Chairman, I'm just making the point because I do know when it flooded last.
Yeah, and
And,
so do some others of us.
Yeah, but why? So why have the Environment Agency said what they've done? Because
But the officers cannot answer for the Environment Agency. The Environment Agency have made their statements, and that is the statement that we may not like it, but that's the statement that unfortunately we have to go with. Councillor Pritchett, were you next?
Thank you, Chair. Would I be correct in thinking that the Environment Agency have issued a standard response rather than a site-specific risk assessment?
The response that the Environment Agency have provided is based on this specific site and the application here before you and the mitigation measures and the flood risk assessment that has been submitted. So it's specific to this application and this site.
I'm linking this to flood history. I mean, have they used recent flood history in it? And is that recorded and shown in any reports to us?
I honestly don't think the officers can answer that, Councillor Pritchett.
It's in the paperwork they've sent, not.
Well, obviously not all, we would have seen it. Councillor Wood.
Yeah, it's a question about clarification really in terms of Appendix A, and I don't know whether or not the detail was obvious in the report that you got from the Environment Agency. With it saying that debris can accumulate on stilts and increase flood risk locally, do they mean within a single event? In other words, debris accumulates on the stilts and makes a particular event worse? Or do they mean you get debris around the stilts that isn't cleared away and subsequent events lead to greater amounts of flooding?
So my understanding, it would be the latter. But as part of the flood risk assessment and mitigation measures that they've put in place, there's the void, which is going to be sort of underneath the building. And that is protected by sort of a grill around the building to prevent sort of debris going through and sort of sitting there, shall we say. They have also provided a maintenance plan, which could be conditioned as well to ensure that there's regular maintenance and clearing of any debris.
So in other words, just to make sure I've got this clear, if there was a condition that they have to keep the stilts clear, so that after any flooding event, actually any debris that's left behind has to be cleared out, then actually there isn't an increased flood risk locally.
So that is as part of the flood risk assessment that they provided and they've submitted. The Environment Agency have said in their comments that the applicant has provided flood resilience measures, and the development is therefore considered safe for the lifetime of the development without increasing flood risk to others. It is just because it's within that functional floodplain 3B, and it's that type of development that isn't considered to be appropriate in that location.
It's actually a general issue that they have rather than a particular issue where actually the applicants have, if you like, mitigated against that greater flood risk. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Freer.
Thank you, Chair. Please forgive me if this question isn't a sensible one, but obviously this is an extension to an existing building. So as a pro-business entrepreneurship economy person, I'm really pleased that there's an application that's trying to improve the local economy by increasing jobs, etc. But my question really is about the existing building. The information is saying this extension is going to cause that problem, but they're obviously got an existing building on this land which hasn't caused that problem. So surely if they're already managing the situation, an extension and all the things that they're put into the application, we're finding that that's manageable within what they've already been doing previously.
Thank you. Have you got an answer or?
I just wanted to say that the existing building is also built on stilts as well, similar to what they're proposing here.
Councillor Pritchett.
The points raised by councillors Wood and Freer are on my list of significant questions, and I've noted the questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for the officer before we get our speaker? No? So I'd like to call Chris Hall, who's the applicant, to take a seat. Good evening, Chris. You need to press the face in the middle of the microphone to switch it on. You'll have 3 minutes, 30 seconds before the end. I'll remind you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Unfortunately, for personal reasons, our agent is unable to attend this evening. So myself as applicant and Chief Executive of Hallmark Consumer Services would like to comment as follows. We employ over 75 people all year round, but this swells to over 100 in our peak Christmas season. I started the business 30 years ago. We've become an award-winning family business providing e-commerce fulfillment solutions to growing businesses. You may know us through the BBC Countryfile calendar, PO Box 25, Melton Mowbray. In short, this application seeks to extend our current facilities. We're at full capacity of the warehouse, and we've submitted plans to extend by another 30,000 square feet. The issue that has arisen is that the area we wish to extend falls within a flood zone. To quote the Environment Agency, they state that this site lies within flood zone 3B, functional floodplain, which is land defined by the Melton Borough Council level 1 and level 2 strategic flood risk assessment as having a high probability of flooding. In order to address this issue, we've worked hard with our professional team to propose design measures that overcome the problem, namely raising the building on stilts in the same way that the existing facility does. The EA have subsequently responded by stating they consider the proposals safe for the lifetime of the development without increasing flood risk to others. It's probably because the volume of flood water we displace is less than a parked car for every half metre of flooding. In other words, our stilted building has hardly any material impact. The problem, however, is that your planning authority have a blanket policy where they cannot approve any new development in flood zone 3B. They're obliged to refuse. That said, from further discussions with your planning team, it was agreed that the committee could take a view on this and, if minded to, approve the decision. Given that the EA states that they believe the proposals are safe, and indeed the planning team have no other objection other than the holding one, you can approve this if you feel the benefits outweigh the risks. Since starting the business, we've moved 4 times to accommodate our growth, all within the town. As an interim measure, we've had to take an additional warehouse in Grantham, where we will employ 8 people. However, we want to operate for one site to take advantage of the economies of scale and avoiding the cost of duplicating our infrastructure. We'd much prefer this to be in Melton. We understand the process would be that should you decide that you prefer to retain these benefits, local employment and economic benefits in the town, then the process will then be to send your decision to the Secretary of State to allow them time to consider your decision and advise if they wish to hold it or not. Failing that, it will be a devastating blow to us and prevent any further growth on our site if the application is refused on what we see as a technicality. We don't believe we can easily sustain 2 separate sites because of the additional overhead costs. So we're left with some awkward decisions to make about our future. We hope you look kindly upon our application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you'd just like to remain there, and we'll give the committee an opportunity to ask you any questions.
Good evening. Void cleaning and the management of the voids to avoid obstruction and any materials to get carried away in a flood, contamination, etc.
The way the current building is designed is brick with grids in it, so it actually prevents any debris from going underneath. And our agent has got plans how that would work in the extension. But effectively, the building will be gridded so that debris wouldn't be able to get underneath. And then, as natural hygiene, we would clear any debris that was around.
Second question. The letter from the Environment Agency dated the 22nd of February 2022 that's on the public planning portal. Have you seen it?
Yes, I think I can't recall which one, but yes, I think I have, yeah.
It's the one that says on page 2, if the planning authority are minded to approve the application, it mentions conditions. Are there any of those conditions that cannot be put in place?
No, they can all be put in place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, I think I probably asked the wrong question to the planning officer a bit ago. Do you have any problem getting insurance on the existing warehouse?
No, we're insured. Yep. Yep. Building insurance a lot. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hall? No? Well, thank you very much indeed. Right, members, over to you. Councillor Smith.
Sorry, John. I am quite keen on this application. I would find it extremely difficult to refuse something that would bring such employment opportunities to the people of Melton. We're all aware of the current economic situation, and I feel that it would almost be cruel to turn around to our residents and say, no, we're going to turn away this employment opportunity and potentially jeopardize the current employment situation of some of the people working there. We regularly approve planning applications in Melton, and these people need somewhere to work. So it would seem counterproductive to me to then go and refuse an extension of a business, especially a homegrown Melton-based business. I would hate to see this go somewhere else. So I'm happy to let others debate this, but I would love to propose it.
Councillor Wood.
It seems to me that the refusal is based on, if you like, a general set of principles. But everything that's been said this evening, including the fact that actually the way that the building is designed doesn't increase flood risk, I would argue in this particular case means that actually an increased flood risk is not actually an issue, and therefore for me doesn't really contribute to the kind of decision that we're making.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Yes, this is a case of NPPF and NPPG not really doing us any favours, isn't it? And sort of blanket policies. My view on it is exactly as has been stated. The existing, and to add to that, the existing building is on stilts. They're perfectly capable and have the relevant insurance. There's never been any events surrounding that existing building, and the extension is going to be the same. And I think all that, and given that we are trying to promote businesses in Melton as opposed to put ourselves at risk of losing them, I think it's perfectly in order for us to make an exception and go against environment agencies, because I noticed that the local lead flood authority, county council, have no issues. So I think there is enough. There are the specification and the conditions. Mr. Hall mentioned that all the conditions that have been referred to are able to be met. Happy to propose permit.
Members, I just want to give you some advice on this particular application. Because it's within this flood zone, the local authority has to, if it's minded to permit and therefore go against what the Environment Agency object to, the local authority has to give the Secretary of State 21 days to effectively call that application in to determine. So if you are minded to permit it, it would only be effectively a recommend to permit subject to those 21 days before it could actually be issued. As part of that, we also have to provide to the Secretary of State a statement of the material considerations which we as the authority consider indicate a departure from that objection. So if you are minded to permit this application, we just need to make sure we draw out those reasons so that they can be provided in a statement to submit to the Secretary of State. Is that clear?
Do you need me to try and summarise those now?
If you're putting forward a motion to permit at this point,
Yeah.
we need to draw out the reasons just so that
Yeah.
officers can record it in the decision notice and
Yeah.
in the statement after. So I think the report details some of those, and I'm sure officers will be able to help you if you try and explain what it is, the reasons that you want to permit it. If you are you putting forward a motion, Councillor Illingworth, to permit? Yeah, so we can just draw those out now. Thank you.
In my simple words,
Employment.
there hasn't been a flooding event there since 1998, apparently, and that predates the building of the Brentonby Dam, which would appear to have solved the problems. I'm sure if Mr. Hall were asked, he could tell us whether there's been any flooding during his tenure of that. And I would suspect the answer is no. So given that it is an extension to a building that already complies, I can't see how we can object to some more of the same that's meeting all the conditions that the objectors have referred to. And I think in the best interests of Melton, we should be approving, because we're looking for growth and prosperity, not shrinkage and loss of jobs. I'm not very good on policy numbers. I've heard EC3 mentioned.
Existing employment.
Forgive me, but that's the essence of what I'm saying. I'm sure officers can put that into the right words.
Louise wishes to come back.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your information, Councillor Illingworth. Resolution to permit. What I've taken is lack of flooding and extension to existing facility. What I wondered whether, based on your previous discussions and debate, was whether there was anything in terms of the information within the report that's provided by economic development. I heard a couple of you talk about obviously the retention of the business and retention of the employment to Melton. So I wondered if there's anything else within the report that you might want to either tease out or expand upon that will help you.
Councillor Wood, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, for me, what seems to be really clear is that the refusal is predominantly about flooding risk. What the report makes very, very clear is that because of the design that's being put forward, actually there is no greater risk around the flooding. And therefore, by building the extension, there isn't a greater risk of either, well, of other assets, if you like, being flooded around the site, because actually the only risk that the Environment Agency seemed to be suggesting is if debris was left to make subsequent flood events worse. Given that that isn't going to happen, I don't see what the problem is.
Sorry, Councillor Smith.
Sorry, I was hoping to second Councillor Illingworth's proposal. I was also going to throw in policy SS1. This is clearly a growing business that has the opportunity and the potential to grow again in the future. Policy EC1, employment growth in Melton Mowbray, I think that speaks for itself, and EC3, and by extension EC5 as well, because it benefits the greater town as well. Yeah. So if I could just add those on in support. Thank you.
So Councillor Illingworth has proposed. Councillor Smith has seconded that proposal. Officers, have you got enough information? So can we have a vote on this, please? The recommendation is that we permit this application. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's carried. Councillor Pritchett, you wanted to say something. Have you got anything to add?
It was just, I was just throwing in some, basically that the risk of flooding is managed, and also the design complies with EN 11A for flood level 3B,
yeah,
as well. So there's a few, just throwing that in.
Thank you. Louisa.
Thank you, and thank you for the motion and the resolution. One part of the approval should the Secretary of State allow us to determine the application will need consideration of conditions. So as officers, I'll probably hand back to Andrew for this. We do have a list of potential conditions that may be of assistance to you. So if I can just let Andrew read those out, and you can either decide whether they're appropriate or there's any additional ones that you'd like to add.
Thank you. So yes, in terms of conditions, we sort of looking at the 3 years to implement the permission as a sort of a standard one, and compliance with the approved plans. They have specified materials on the plans, but it may be best to sort of secure further details of that to be submitted via condition. The levels of the development, that is the condition by the Environment Agency. So one of their conditions that they recommended is the levels to be as detailed and as proposed, as well as the flood risk assessment and those mitigation measures, which includes sort of the void clearance and general maintenance of that as well. There's a couple of other conditions that the consultees have advised in their responses. One regarding highways surrounding access and sort of parking and turning to be provided prior to sort of the developments first brought in, while the extension is sort of first brought into use. Construction traffic management as well. The Highways Authority have asked for a condition for a construction traffic management plan to be submitted, as well as a construction environment management plan, which sort of looks at noise, disturbance and working hours during construction of the development. And then the other ones are sort of the Environment Agency conditions, and also the conditions recommended by the lead local flood authority. So if there's any others that you consider appropriate, then yeah, happy to hear.
Councillor Freer, did you?
Sorry, yeah, just a clarification on the traffic management plan. From my previous experience and knowledge, I know that traffic management plans are put forward on brand new applications usually. I've not heard of one where if there's an extension to a site, if it's not changing anything in terms of the highways, unless I've not read that in the report.
So that condition was recommended by the Highways Authority for construction traffic management plan, including routing of the construction traffic, wheel cleansing facilities and vehicle parking facilities. So it's more about the construction traffic, not sort of the change to the roads.
Sorry, thank you.
So officers, your content that you've got, enough reasons, members, you're happy with your decision? Okay, fine. We now move on to the bypass at Asfordby, bypass road, Asfordby. And I believe that's Helen.
Thank you, Chair. So, committee may be familiar with this application. It was reported to you on the 28th of April. The application seeks to vary conditions 20 and 21 attached to an outline planning permission for a residential development on Bypass Road, Asfordby. The variation of conditions seeks to remove wording that references the provision of a play area or play equipment within the landscaping scheme and within the landscaping management plan. Committee resolved to defer this application to allow for additional conversations to be held with the parish council and ward members. A meeting has now taken place where the scheme was further discussed. Subsequent to that, the parish council and the local ward councillor removed their objection to the proposal. They are satisfied that a sufficient equipped play areas exist within Asfordby, so within the existing settlement. With regards to the proposal, as we went through last time, it would improve existing connectivity to the existing play areas, and therefore it is recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Any questions for Helen? Any points of clarification, Councillor Holmes?
Thank you. First of all, I apologise I didn't come back to you with that, with what I'd found out. And I was doing something this afternoon and I realised I hadn't done it. So I just apologise to do that. But obviously, when we debate it, I will speak.
Any other questions or points of clarification for Helen? No? Okay, we have two speakers, and the first will be Dean Weldon from Dealey. I thought he came last as ward councillor. Dean Weldon, sorry, of Dealey Homes, who's the applicant.
Thank you, Chair, members. My name's Dean Weldon. I'm Development Manager at Dealey Homes and the lead applicant on this application to vary conditions 20 and 21 of the outline consent to bring them into accordance with the reserved matters approval. The original outline application was approved by this committee in May of 2018 and included a reference to play equipment within conditions 20 and 21. This original consent also contained a 0% on-site affordable housing provision on viability grounds, with a £25,000 contribution in lieu of that, as well as a further £214,000 of Section 106 contributions. Dealey Homes purchased this consent in partnership with East Midlands Housing and submitted a reserved matters application which contained 76% on-site affordable housing, and still committed to payment of all £240,000 of 106 obligations. When discussing reserved matters at pre-application, it became apparent there was no longer a need to deliver any play equipment on this scheme. The Reserve Matters approved drawings therefore make no reference to any play equipment, and those drawings were approved by this committee at Reserve Matters stage. In order to legally discharge the outline conditions that contain that reference, we're required to remove the reference in conditions 20 and 21, so that we can move on to occupation of our properties. Dealey Homes and EMH have held several conversations with Asfordby Parish Council, and they have now confirmed in writing that they do not wish to see any play equipment on this site. Instead, we've agreed to provide 2 dog waste bins in the near vicinity of the scheme. It's a popular dog walking route with the new connectivity into the village, so we will provide these for the parish outside of the planning process. Once this application has been approved and the conditions regularised between the 2 permissions, we are ready to submit corresponding details for approval and begin occupying the first affordable properties in the next few weeks. Thank you for your time in considering this application, and I trust members will agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
If you could just remain there and see if the committee's got any questions for you. Any questions for Dean? Councillor Illingworth.
Did I hear right? Originally there was no need or provision for affordable, and did you then say 76%?
Yes, so the
No?
original application had 0% affordable housing, and there was a £25,000 contribution instead of that. Our Reserve Matters application included 76% affordable housing, which is 40 out of the 55. And we still are paying that £25,000 affordable housing contribution as well. So
congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Sorry, my eyes are failing me at the minute. On the picture of the on the drawing, is that fence along the entire boundary, sort of behind the main road? Is there a fence along the boundary there?
The northern boundary.
Yes.
Where are we?
So
Sorry?
you've got Bypass Road,
Yep.
and then the green space with the trees. Is there a fence along there?
I believe there is, yes. I
Okay,
don't
cool.
think, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Going to get the slide, so.
So along where those trees are at the top, is there a fence that runs along there between the application site and the main road, Bypass Road?
I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. I'd have to check the landscaping drawings. I don't think it's a part of this application, so I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Obviously, the application was deferred roughly a month ago for further discussions.
Yes.
Is it your understanding that all interested parties are now singing from the same hymn sheet, and that, you know, peace has broken out and everybody agrees?
It is, and hopefully Councillor de Boer will confirm that immediately after me.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Any more questions, anybody for Dean? No? Well, thank you very much indeed, Dean. Thank you. I'd now like to call the ward councillor, Councillor Ronnie DeVille. Yeah, I know you're speaking on behalf of the parish council and not just as the ward councillor. I will remind you, you have 3 minutes and I'll give you 30 seconds warning.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Madam Chairman, as you know, I'm here as a chairman of Asfordby Parish Council. I'm here also as a ward councillor, but to support the development of Dealey Homes application to remove the requirement to site a children's play area on this site at Bypass Road, Asfordby, as is recommended in the paper at 4.1.2, 3 and 4. Members, the Parish Council considered its position based on a review of its activities in preparation for setting its annual budget During the process, the council has received a report on the parish estate's children's recreational provision play facilities, in which the parish has 4 equipped sites together with 3 additional open space areas. One or other of these are within 2 to 5 minutes at most walk for anyone living in the developed conurbation of Ashforby. Members, additionally, the cost to inspect, maintain, so we consider this as well, the cost to inspect, maintain the service repairing during 2021 was in excess of £20,000, with vandalism being a significant factor. So we believe that we have sufficient recreational children's play areas within the parish, and we hope that you'll approve this application to remove the requirement for this development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. If you just remain there so that the committee have got the opportunity to ask you or get any clarification. Anybody got Councillor Holmes?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I've gone into this a bit. ROSPA, playing fields and play areas, European standard, EN 1176. Now then, the area in the front of this, I understand, and I can. But the other ward councillor also agrees that that there are plenty of play areas, but where all the trees are on the it's not there anymore, but on our plan, I understand that for playing fields, that a developer must provide, or somebody must provide, fencing because of children's play, because there's an area at the front here, at the front of that road, there's an area, and then it goes on to the bypass, doesn't it? And so who is going to provide the fencing, the solid fencing in front of those trees, so it doesn't?
Councillor Holmes, can the officer just can the officer just come back? Helen wants to say something.
Right.
Just to confirm, from what you've said, you're talking about legislation that requires a certain type of boundary treatment around a play area. The application site doesn't include a proposed play area. It includes areas of open space.
Exactly.
Therefore, that legislation isn't relevant to the current proposal. And also, to go back to Councillor Smith's point, there was a plan attached to the Reserve Matters application that set out the boundary treatments that were proposed within the site. And it's a 1.2 metre high post and rail fence to the boundary within inside the kind of landscaping strip proposed along the boundary of the bypass road.
Have you got anything to say to the officer before I hand over to Councillor Smith?
Well, you can.
No, Councillor Holmes,
yes.
if you.
All right, it was just that post and rails, children can get through that. It wants to be metal fencing so that they can't get onto the bypass.
That's not what we're discussing. I'm sorry. Councillor Smith.
Sorry. So there is definitely some kind of. Okay, thank you. That satisfies my question. Thank you.
Any comments, questions, clarification from Councillor DeBille? No? Right, thank you very much, Councillor DeBille.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Right, so over to debate. Councillor Smith?
I'll go for it. I am satisfied with the result of the deferment from the previous meeting. Whilst it is still not what I would want in an ideal world, I do understand the reasons, and therefore I would begrudgingly propose approval of this application. I am incredibly happy with what the developer is doing in terms of housing allocation and the contributions that they're making, and it wouldn't be right of me in my conscience to refuse something that is going to be of so much benefit to the people of the borough. So I'm proposing approval.
Councillor Wood.
Yeah, I'm willing to second that.
given that the deferral was actually to ask the parties to go back and discuss, it seems to have broken out into a rare instance of harmony and peace. So I don't see what the problem is. So yeah, I'm more than happy to second it.
We've had a proposal to permit, and it has been seconded by Councillor Wood. Can I have a show of hands of all in favour? That's carried. That's a unanimous decision. There is no urgent business. Yeah, but I would like members to stay behind for a couple of minutes, please. Thank you.